Good morning. My name is Isaac. I'm with the mortuary, and it's my honor to be here with you guys today. Our condolences to you and your family. We will start with we started with a family prayer. I will now offer an opening prayer here, after which we will have a tribute and a life sketch offered by Marissa. Make sure I got my notes correct, by Marissa Ramsey. After Marissa speaks, we'll have family members come and share memories, after which we will then have hymn number 152, God Be With You Till We Meet Again, and we'll go to that point. Our dear kind Father in heaven, we are grateful for this day. We are grateful for the sunshine and for the light and the happiness that it brings. We are grateful to be gathered here as family and friends to celebrate the life of Janis Smith. We pray, Father, that thy spirit would be with us to comfort and to provide healing for those who are grieving and who are feeling the loss of Janis. We pray that as we meet, that thy spirit would be here in abundance, that we'll be able to feel of it and feel of thy love for us. We pray that as we travel to the cemetery here in a little bit, that we'll be able to all travel in safety, and that we'll be able to meet there and again feel of Janis's love and concern for each and every one of us, and that we'll be able to share our love for her. We ask these things, Father, and pray for these favors and blessings, and we do so in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Marissa.
Right. Janis Barchi was born, sorry, I apologize. I currently have laryngitis. So Janis Barchi was born in Providence, Utah to Melvin and Vilda Barchi on May 31st, 1942. She had 3 siblings, Jay, Brent, and Julie. She was a Cache Valley Dairy princess and received a full-ride scholarship to Utah State for fashion design. Then she married Ron John and had her son Cameron. When Cam was 6, she moved to Fort Collins, Colorado, where she worked as a court stenographer. She met and married Martin Smith. They moved to Boulder, Colorado, where Melanie and Marty were born. In 1984, the family moved to Evanston, Wyoming, where Janis thrived. She continued to make porcelain dolls there and taught classes. Eventually, she worked at Uinta County Museum, which she loved. She passed on December 12th, 2023.
There are so many amazing stories about my mother. I could speak about her all day. It's hard to summarize a life like hers, but I'm going to try. And these are some of my favorites. She used to make all of our bread. I remember wishing I could have store-bought Wonder Bread like my friends, but now I would give anything to have her bread again. She would make Marty and I little bread chicks that had beaks and tails, and we would like to pull off their heads first and smother them in butter. She loved butter. She always wanted to have more than Weight Watchers would allow, but she was pretty strict with herself on her weight. But she made yogurt too, and of course at the time I wanted Yoplait. But we used to have a big bowl of kombucha tea on the counter before it became popular. She was always health conscious and wanted us to be too. I remember her teaching aerobics classes in the church gymnasium, and she would always go to the Evanston Rec Center minimum 3 times a week for yoga and jazzercise. She didn't, after she had a vertebrae collapse in her back and she didn't want to exercise anymore, and I could fully understand that. She used to deliberately park far away in the grocery store parking lots. And I would get so irritated because she just wanted to get some walking in, but I'm like, there's a spot right up there. And she's in her most cheerful voice, she said, I know. I want to mention the way that my parents first met because it's a great story. Mom was living in Fort Collins with Cam, and he came home and told her about this nice old lady down the street that gave him cookies. That turned out to be my Grandma Smith before my parents ever met. Mom was working at the courthouse as a stenographer, and a coworker came up to her and said one day that her brother was having a hard time after his divorce, and would she be willing to go out on a blind date with him to cheer him up? She said yes. And when he came to pick her up, she saw his height and ran back in to change out of heels into flats. But she loved dancing with my dad. I remember them waltzing around the living room laughing as he dipped her backwards. She loved her siblings so much. She kept Brent's thesis from college her entire life. She respected Julie's fashion sense and sharp, witty intelligence and was so proud of both of them. She always told me I should have been Julie's daughter, but I am grateful for my mom and how much I learned from her. I love classical music because of her and Looney Tunes, but mostly her. I don't love opera the way that she did. She really loved opera, but I can appreciate it through her. We had a huge garden in Boulder, and she loved having us out there with her, weeding, eating peas, looking at tomato bugs, all those wonderful things. We grew watermelon, corn, tomatoes, and so much more. And I loved that garden. She used to let me take bowls and pie pans out in the backyard with a hose to make mud pies. Didn't complain about the mess or anything. She made homemade Play-Doh for us. She always seemed to be okay with what we wanted to do. She took joy in our joy. She knew all kinds of fun things to keep us entertained. She took cloth handkerchiefs to church and made dolls out of them and other things. She sewed felt activity books for us to play with, and I loved having her braid my hair. She loved old things and the history behind them. The museum was the perfect place for her. I remember walking in and seeing her up on a ladder, refinishing ceiling beams. She sewed new covers for chairs there and loved telling people about the exhibits. She used to do crossword puzzles with a coworker there who said she was so smart, she would fill in most of the answers. That coworker was Kame Pyatt, who later became my mother-in-law. She grew up in a home where animals were outside only. She wanted us to have pets, so we learned the love and compassion that animals bring. I've always been really grateful for that. And animals loved to be next to her, even though she wasn't always tickled about that. She would sigh and say something like, yes, you're a good dog, and pat it. I used to catch garter snakes in the backyard in Boulder all the time. And one of my favorite stories about the garter snakes is that they like to get out of their terrariums. And I didn't realize that mine had escaped this day, and she was down in the basement doing laundry. And all of a sudden, I'm going to try not to scream too loud, but it was pretty loud. I hear this shriek from the basement, and she says, Melanie Ann Smith, you get up here and get the snake, or down here and get the snake. She'd picked up a pile of laundry, and it was curled up under the sheets. She was really patient about all of that. I had a hamster who escaped also and made a nest in her oven drawer. And she just helped me clean it up and come get it. But we had a dog named Genghis that consistently got out of the yard. He would always head straight for the state hospital, which is really funny on its own. But They had electric doors that he would just run through and they knew to call mom. And she'd just go pick him up again from the state hospital. We had a dog named Bear who was half chow and half black lab. And she tried so hard to walk him every day and train him, but more often than not, he walked her. She's so little. One of our favorite stories is that when she was young, Brent and one of the Parker boys locked her in the chicken coop. And they pecked at her hair and flapped their wings around her head. She had an absolute terror of birds after that. It's horrible, but we sure laughed for the rest of her life. Periodically, a bird would find its way through the stovepipe or wherever and fly around the house. She would cover her head with her arms. Oh, oh. Well, Marty and I would collapse in paroxysms of laughter. She always took it good-naturedly. The funny thing is she loved pictures of birds and figurines around her house, just not the real thing. Also, I've never heard anyone say eek on a regular basis. But she did. She was always conscious of her appearance. I remember her dropping me off at school complete with hair and makeup done. She said, well, what if I got in a wreck and they had to haul me off in my pajamas? I really didn't care about any of that, but she did. She tried very hard not to give me a false body image, though. I really appreciated that. She wouldn't buy Barbie dolls for me because they were so unrealistic, and she didn't want me to feel like that's how I needed to be. Way ahead of the times on that one. Mom was an avid reader of Reader's Digest, fan of Reader's Digest, and would make us learn a new big word every week. She loved the joke sections, and sometimes we laughed until we cried. I loved it when something would tickle her funny bone and neither of us could quit laughing. We had opposite personalities and frequently butted heads, but she was my best friend for a lot of years. She always had my back for every situation and was supportive and encouraging. She had a terrible sweet tooth that she fought internally. She never wanted to develop a pooch. We'd be watching movies at night though, and sometimes it'd just be too much. And she'd say, how about a little something sweet? So we've had opportunity to laugh recently because while cleaning out her room at Maple Springs, we found chocolate and candy stashes all over, everywhere, even under the sink of her walker, just the necessities in there. She was incredible at everything she set her hand to. I always knew that no matter what I needed fixed, she could make it so that no one could tell there had ever been a problem. She was a remarkably gifted oil painter, quilter, knitter, needle pointer, seamstress, toll painter, pianist, and doll maker. I'm sure I'm leaving some things out because she just did so many things. Once she took a Russian language class from Bosie's in Evanston just for fun. She never wanted to be inactive and loved learning new things. It's been difficult to watch someone so talented decline. She wanted to be the best grandmother ever, and she was. She loved her grandfather more than anything and wanted to be that for her grandchildren. She had many tea parties with real goodies and tea with tiny fine china for them. She pushed my kids in a stroller while she rollerbladed around the state park. I was just so amazed at her energy and what she was willing to go through for them, anything they wanted. I remember going cross-country skiing with her. We tied ropes around our waists, attached to sleds behind us so that we could pull our kids with us. My kids. When I moved to Laramie with my family, she and my dad would meet us halfway in Wamsutter. When we got close, my kids had their noses pressed against the windows, watching for the first sign of her. My mom would already be in the parking lot waiting, jumping up and down and waving her arms and beaming. My son Connor was really into trains. My mom loved trains anyway, so she was all about it. They used to drive around for hours and called it chasing trains. One day she ran frantically alongside a train, waving her arms. The conductor actually stopped and gave them a short ride. Connor was elated, and she was so happy they got to do that together. She thought everything her grandkids did was so cute. She wrote down baby sayings and stories. She loved telling those stories to them as they got older. Once I suggested that she get rid of the pool table because nobody was around to play it anymore and she was running out of room. She said, "No, what if I have great grandkids one day who want me to shoot pool with them?" And that's all she wanted, was spend time with them. She was so full of life, so determined, so stubborn sometimes. She never wanted to miss out on anything. Every time we disagreed, she'd say, "I'm putting the mother's curse on you." And oh, you've heard that. "You'll be just like me one day." Well, mother, if I can be anywhere as close to being as accomplished, kind, and as loving as you, I will count myself a success.
This has been tough, but I'm so happy just looking at her picture and seeing everybody, so many people I haven't seen in years. But as I was reflecting this week, at some point I realized there was 4 distinct chapters, and I never realized I categorized my memories until I became aware of it, but of my life, memories of my mom, early childhood, and then each one was very different to me. But then there's young adulthood into adulthood, and that was different. And then her grandma years, and then dementia years. Anyways, so I've kind of categorized, went through each phase and just thought about some stuff that was special to me. She was always, you've heard from Melanie, but and I'll repeat some of that a little bit, but she was always doing stuff with and for us, always just busy, and she's balanced her own life. She always had so much going on. In the 80s, there was aerobics in Boulder. We call them aerobics. And we would go to whatever church or gym and play and usually be bored out of our minds while she exercised with a bunch of other moms. And anyway, she did her idea of a good housewife was kind of old fashioned, but she sewed dresses and tried to teach us to sew, which we kind of rebelled against. Taught us to handwrite thank you letters, which we also rebelled against. And sit up straight and chew our food, which I still don't do. It's given me some digestive problems, and I always think I should have listened to her. She took us when we were little. She always took us to breakdancing classes, piano lessons. She tried whatever we wanted to do. She was just all about it, and just always so busy. She also did all of the church stuff, the DOP and the Pioneer Trek. She was always about making us do scouts or me, but young women's, and she did visiting teaching and home teaching, and always just busy, but it was never just busy work. She just was contributing, selfless all the time. She would take us down to the body shop and have us clean, which to my small brain, it was kind of futile. I always thought, this is stupid. The body guys are so gross and disgusting. The office was always so dirty. We could vacuum it twice a week, and it just didn't, nothing mattered. And but she always wanted to contribute. She taught us to do that even with the business. Sorry. She always made everything so special for us, and that carried on through the grandkids, like Melanie said. When we would go on trips, and I'd forgotten about the dolls in church. She would rub our backs in church and make little drawings of Mickey Mouse, and I was so impressed at how good she could draw. And I would tell people what a great artist she was, and she would say she was genuinely embarrassed. She didn't think she was. They're just doodles. She'd say, "Oh, I'm not. They're just doodles." But they were so amazing to me as a little kid, and I forgot about the little cloth dolls. We would go on trips, and my dad would listen to, he'd put in Hank Williams or Marty Robbins. And then after a while, we would turn that off and we'd sing songs, and she taught us harmony parts to You Are My Sunshine, things like Clementine. But we'd take turns picking what song we want to sing. And then there was this little game that we would play. And I don't remember the rules or the stipulations, but I'm sure it was if we were good for a certain amount of time. She had a little box of treats. They were like cheap toys. And she would let us pick one. And they were just cheap and silly, like silly putty maybe. But I remember being jealous when you would get one that I wanted. Anyways, it was always just, those are memories that she made everything so special, but it was always about the kids and other people. But yeah, tickling our backs and playing with our hair. That was the way we got to behave in church. One of the things that was what made the church kind of tolerable was the tickling our backs and the drawings and stuff. One of the things that made it intolerable for me was trying to leave, and she would take forever to get out of the church, talking to everybody on the way out. And I'm sure we were hanging on her pant leg or dress saying, "Please, can we go? Just a minute. Be patient." And one time I remember I had gotten really impatient. She would give us the keys sometimes and say, "Go sit in the car, wait." And I thought I would be nice. I was probably 8 or 10 or somewhere in there. I thought I would just pull the car up to the front doors of the church for her. She gave me the keys and I went out and started it. And she said, I just looked out the front doors of the church and here comes my station wagon careening over the mounds of the curbs and flower beds. Somehow I got it stopped. And she came out probably saying, "Eek." Melanie brought up the snakes. I was also the same. I would bring home frogs and snakes and lizards. She was always so patient. In fact, she would buy me iguanas. You guys probably remember the iguana that terrified Floyd. And I think she got a little satisfaction out of that also. We thought it was funny, and I didn't know how terrified he was of that lizard. But she was so patient, and all my snakes would get out. Same thing. Eek, Marty. There was the years, my young adulthood years. There's a lot of memories there, but I put them through a lot of hell. She was my dad was a big softy. And in addiction, we call that the enabler. And my mom was tough, and she wanted me to be accountable. And there was a couple times we talked today. I talked to your boys, Melanie, about Anasazi, and they hadn't heard a lot of that. But she made a lot of tough calls when I was in drug court. Even I was getting ready to graduate, and I had started using drugs again, and she knew it. And so she turned me in to drug court. And I thought, when I found out, I wasn't happy about it. Getting my head straight, it's one of those things where she made a tough call. I didn't realize this situation that I'd put her in. And she was faced with a tough choice to save her son's life or let it continue. She always made those kind of decisions. I'm gonna brush past some of that. Music, after getting straightened up though, she was always my biggest fan. She came to every gig that she could, even in Colorado and Utah. And one of the last ones that she came to, I think she had stopped driving by then. It was close to that time anyways. It was my friend Steve and I we were playing a wedding on top of this gorgeous mountain in Colorado, but it was really windy. And she had no body fat whatsoever, no insulation. And so she was sitting up there, and we had borrowed jackets for her. She was freezing, just shivering uncontrollably. And we found her a big blanket, and she had it over her head, and she's still shivering. I felt horrible because I had to finish playing before we could leave. We offered her to sit in the car, and she wouldn't leave because she wanted to watch me play. And I think it took her 2 days to warm up. Literally, we were worried that she had hypothermia or something. She was a toughie. Several times over the last few years, she would say, she was always disappointed that I had kind of lost interest in playing the dulcimer. And I started playing some other instruments, but she didn't like it as much. She would say, "Oh, I just miss you playing the dulcimer." And then she'd say, "I know it's morbid, but you better play the dulcimer at my funeral." And she'd shake her little fist. So I promised her I would play it. The grandkids, I know everybody here knows this. It's kind of redundant to reiterate how much she loved you guys. But you guys were her life. They're going to share some memories, I think, on their own, but this is just, she was so inspiring she made you guys feel like the most important people in the world, and that's because to her, you guys were. I'm really proud that my kids got so many years with them. My dad less so, but my mom was just, you guys were her whole life. Her dementia years were mostly suffering, at least from my memory. We still made some good memories and some silly ones. One of my favorites after we moved her to the home was me and my kids went to visit her, and she thought she was a prisoner, which kind of she was, but she snuck us around the facility. And she would tell us, she would peek out, open the doors and peek out. And she'd go. And then she'd go, "Okay, come on." And she'd go. Shh. And we kept telling her, I mean, it was equal parts gut-wrenching and hilarious. We were giggling softly and also choking back tears somehow, simultaneously. But we went out to the car to get something, and she said, "Oh, be careful. I hope they don't get you." We also kind of saw her revert to some childhood, I think, and she's like a child in so many ways. And that was kind of special, at least to me. Not anything I would have ever chosen, but you guys are the only ones left with those memories. And it was kind of a new aspect of my mom that I hadn't seen. Anyway, she touched so many people's lives. And Evanston was such a good community for her. I know she made everybody here, so many more people's lives better. And she was the best sister and a wife and a mother and a grandma that I could ever imagine. I just want to say thanks, Mom.
Sorry. It was really hard to figure out what memories to share here. But I tried to pick memories that portray what I think is, grandma's outlook on life, just kind of those fundamental pillars of who she was. One year we took a family trip to Boston. Connor and my dad went to a baseball game, and so my mom, my grandma, and I decided to go on a walk. As we were walking past a garden on the side of the path, Grandma insisted that we stop to admire the floral aromas. We stopped, we smelled, and we moved on. Or at least we tried to, because as Grandma stepped back onto the curb, she had a slip and hit the concrete hard. Immediately, everybody around rushed to help. Even strangers asked if she needed an ambulance. But she was a tough cookie. That's something that we've all realized after. We already knew it, but a common thread that we're all hearing, is how tough she was. And to my surprise, my mom and I were infinitely more freaked out by the fall than she was. In that one slip, it ended up that she had dislocated her pinky and obtained several bad bruises, but she insisted that we walk to the hospital because it was close by and she didn't want to take an ambulance. I was crying. I was sobbing, but she showed me her pinky that was shaped like an uppercase W and wiggled it around, and she made it say to me in a silly voice, "Hello, Kenny," which I couldn't help but crack up at through my tears. Grandma was always the rock, the stability, even when the misfortunes were happening to her. On a different occasion, Mom and Grandma were looking at cross-stitch and sewing patterns. One design that I was shocked at had a tongue-in-cheek poem about passing away. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was pretty morbid. I said, "That's horrible," and Grandma was just laughing away at it. And she said, "There's no point in avoiding it, so you might as well laugh at it." Another memory I have was when I was very, very little. I'm not sure how old I was, but I couldn't have been more than 4. I had a vivid imagination, and I was playing in the backyard one day when I scared myself, imagining a terrifying creature that lived under the stairs. It looked like a hairless cat. It had black and green stripes, if anybody was curious, but it scared me. And so I ran back inside and told Grandma in a horrified voice, "There's a green monster living underneath your stairs." She replied, "No, he's my friend. That's where he belongs." I was still learning the difference between pretend and reality. And so I had to take a day to consider what Grandma said. I knew that I made it up, but I also believed it could have been real. So later, after I took a day to consider, I went to her and I said, "Grandma, earlier, were you pretending about the green monster?" She also took a minute to consider and she said, "Well, that depends. Were you pretending?" And I remember I had to sit there and think about that because I was awestruck by that. She always knew what to say. She was completely comfortable jumping headfirst into this alternate reality that I created, in which a green monster lived underneath her stairs. And she even managed to add her own grandma spin to it. But when it came to me asking her an impossible question, she did the smartest thing possible by letting me decide what I wanted to believe. Lastly, when I was headed off to college, I was having a pretty rough summer. I was staying with her before heading off in the fall. She sat me down for a talk. She told me about when she left home and went to Utah State and everything that she did there. She told me about how she got a group of friends that were quite the bad influence. She told me about how her dorm had a curfew, which I was shocked by. But I was even more shocked that my always good, always rule following grandma had snuck out of that dorm and avoided the curfew many nights. She said that her and her friends even had this secret phrase that they would whisper to each other when somebody was close to catching them. I don't know if she would appreciate me sharing what this phrase was here in this context, but if you're curious, ask me afterwards. But ask at your own risk. Ultimately, she wanted me to understand that she was telling me, don't lose yourself. No matter what you go, where you go, what you do, or who your friends are, remember who you are. Providing stability, acceptance of the inevitable, the profound ability to balance whimsy and reality. These are all lessons that you continue teaching me all the time, Grandma. No matter where I go or what I do, you are a part of me that I could never lose. Also, a part that I forgot to say about the Boston story is that we got her a tourist t-shirt that said, always take time to smell the roses. Love you, Grandma.
This will be a little shorter, maybe probably a little more informal, but she was the best grandma I could have ever asked for. She would always would make time for us to do stuff with us, to make sure that we were having the best life that we could have. And one of my favorite things that I would do with her fairly consistently was we would play the piano together. It was so fun. She's the reason that I learned how to play the piano, and I haven't really kept up with it as much as I probably should. But I still, every time I play, I think of her. It was the best. Another one of my favorite memories is a lot of nights when we'd be going to bed, she would rub my back so softly with her little fingers, and she would sing "You Are My Sunshine." And it was always, I loved it so much. She was such a, like has already been said, she was such a talented woman with everything that she would do. She did so perfectly. She was amazing. I loved doing, she had like a little puppet theater thing that you would just set up very simply and fold out. And I loved doing those little puppet shows with her. They were so much fun. I should have probably prepared a little more because I'm having trouble thinking of more, but she was the best grandma I could have ever asked for. She did an amazing job. Perfect.
All right, guys, bear with me. Exactly. It's really interesting, the consistency of all the stories, and they're so vastly different. Mine is the same way. You'll see what I mean, but honestly, you can tell this is the same person throughout all these stories. She never forgot who she was. Janis Barchi Smith, I don't know if I will be able to ever imagine a world without you. I can see that's a reality, but your ability to crack jokes under pressure is timeless. There's a clear talent for composure when the going got rough, and it was astonishing to watch firsthand. You seem to have a plan for everything, a backup or fail-safe just in case. Although it was a poker face, or maybe your Uno face, I guess you should call it. It was a pretty good one, nevertheless. So stubborn on a positive environment for everyone, every single person. Never short of teasing or poking fun on other people's shortcomings. Rest assured, if you messed up 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would hear about it next visit and the visits afterwards. There'll be a long time before I comprehend that you're not hiding to get a rise out of everyone, just to see our reactions. cliche as that may sound, it's completely in character of you, and still hope you gave us a being around for so long. You seem almost immortal. It's probably intentional. She never looks and finds that we're misbehaving or causing more of a ruckus than usual. You're so clearly proud to carry the names and legacies you were given. Family was a top priority, and you somehow always took that to another level. Names and stories of relatives sailing from other countries, and even more family history all throughout Utah. I hope to be able to have even half the amount of stories that you have from your ancestors. You have such an appreciation, my bad, such an appreciation for your grandparents, so it makes sense that you seem trained for such a job. A connoisseur of sweets, an endless seeming recipe book full of dishes that never fell below exquisite. Picky children still had to take a no thank you bite, as it would every meal was well prepared and should have been appreciated. When mom would tell me stories of healthy homemade everything, I wouldn't believe my ears. Not the same person. She was never short of ice cream, snacks, or sweets, the professional grandma she was. Mom would say she wasn't allowed chocolate, only carob, which I've never had, but I can't say I've heard raving reviews. It must have been her plan all along to be a model grandparent. Apple pies after piano lessons, snack bar after rec center swimming, ice cream during movie nights, sneaking snacks in the theater like a heist. Appreciate something would always be in your purse if one of us kids got restless during sacrament. You had clear intentions to spoil us more than necessary in case. Some memories include you drying off my hair with a towel out of the bath, giving your signature wacky hairdo. That's what she called it, grandma's wacky hairdo. A stern but kind joking voice of yours, making sure to have the butter spread from absolute corner to corner on toast. Countless camping trips. When I got my license, you would always ask if I could be your chauffeur so I could get my driving experience in, and you would get the 5-star limo service you deserve. Walking your late pup Shiloh. And then there's also convincing you to keep Shiloh. Definitely not your idea. I could tell early on that you appreciated nature to such an extent, a passion for the world left alone by humans. Much of this was learned by us and passed down by all of us. You recycled before it was cool. Although you probably preferred the convenience of man-made innovations, the inner mountain man in you would be let out pretty often. A respect for wildlife and our planet, and yet such a prominent part of our community at the same time. I'll never truly be done with this talk. Your determination and drive lives on in our shared goals. I strive to accomplish things that follow in your footsteps, setting an example for those around me, preserving what's left of the natural world, and contributing to the church, neighborhood, city, and anyone in need of a hand. A patient teacher in love with art and culture. I know the bravery you taught me will stand out to others and make you more proud than you could have imagined. And other memories, after he said, she would also tell me that I don't chew enough and I don't eat more than often. It was, I was frustrated at first. I was like, I'm hungry. And one other one, we would go to swimming lessons all the time, and she would always be up in the window, just looking down, watching us no matter what. She was so proud. Thank you.
We'll now sing hymn number 152, God Be With You Till We Meet Again. After which we'll open it up for the sharing of memories for everyone else. We now open it for the sharing of memories from everyone.
And I just have great memories of Aunt Janis. And just have such. That's like I was talking. Aunt Janis. Yeah, but have such a talent. And of course, just all of you. Thank you. I was felt was like apple that I will really cherish. And then it was so fascinating. I came home one day. I opened it, I was like, oh my God. Well, she. But, like all of them. And Romeo's being. I'm just so grateful for that. And, oh, and also have great. Um. And like the whole just all of it. So anyway, I appreciate that she was part of my life. Love her a great deal of all this. And all of the love from this was. And very honest. My sister-in-law. Talk about adventure. After your kids have grown and my kids have grown, the river rafting trip together. It was one of the most exciting things. Janis was a friend to everybody. Everybody knew and loved her by the trip, and she never smiled. Everywhere, get their tents up faster than like every mountain, and Janis never did but smile and laugh. Like this. I love Janis. I'll just come here and not do that. My name is Betty Hanson, and I'm from Evanston, Wyoming. And I can honestly say I'm super blessed by having that there. And I know I was Evanston and maybe I'm from Salt Lake. And so I've been there a couple of years by the time she got there. And I had always done ceramics. And when she moved there and she did porcelain, we just thought, wow, we've got this in common, right? So we found out how different porcelain really are. Yeah, you fire them, you clean your everywhere, but after that. But anyway, I learned her trade, she learned mine. And she, I'll say, babied me through a couple of classes because I always wanted to make a baby doll, and then I made a baby, and I loved them. I was so appreciative that she wanted to doing the ceramics that I do. I didn't have to have that same representative. So, anyway, she would do it for me. I tried. But she babied me through it so good. So we had that in common for a long time, and we had kids the same age. My son went out to party. Those two were joined at the hip, just like Janis and I were for a while. And much as I appreciated her porcelain and all the other times she talked about, she was amazing in every aspect of it. And one time she taught me to taking this class with her, and it was like 3 or 4 weeks long. And it's been a long time. I don't remember. I know we had to travel to get. I don't remember one of them. Anyway, we're out at garage sales hunting for horses. You know, the bounce time kids right off. And we found this each horse, and then we had to drill holes through it. We got a post put through it, and we built. I think she got one of the built stands, and I made my own. But it took us about 3 weeks of traveling and talking about it, and working on it, and giving each other ideas about it to make our little carousel horses. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Janis's house. Obviously, you've seen the horse because she propels. Yeah, and did she still have it? Did she tell you guys something else? Oh, yeah, I love the way hers turned out. Mine turned out almost as good as hers. I love mine too. I actually ended up giving it to, well, actually it was Martin's grandmother. So, at least she had, I made 2, and then I made anyway, I always knew that it was her that kept me going in those years, because I grew up in Salt Lake with a lot of family around, and all of a sudden I ended up in the and she came along, and she very much filled that spot in me for many, many years. So after my husband died, I moved to Laramie, and I was gone for years. And, after I got back, we'd see each other once in a while, but we just didn't hang out. So, but I love her to death, and I always love. And I know she's happy now back with mine. Love you, Janis.
You guys will brush past a lot of stuff. But one of our favorite memories we laughed about was one time Tracy gave Melanie out to Huntsville, up on an old farm. And pull up in front of this house. There were little kids out running around barefooted. They were kind of like, oh, they're kind of really good. And Grandma and Mom got out of the car and said, hi. All the little kids called, oh, finish. And Grandma Tracy was shocked. Then they called her Twitter. And I think Grandma was so offended. My mom, they just laughed about it for years. We have this. You know, one freak. Absolutely. Let us on some funny pictures. Grandma Tracy. I think she ever got over that.
So projecting isn't my thing, so I'm gonna come by the mic. It's hard to talk up here than it is down there.
Okay. So she was never angry, like she was always really patient. like anything, I guess. And like speaking of fashion, or like, I think it was me and Connor, Carson and Sunday, but there was like a black kid on the street. And so all of us decided that we'd go out while Grandma was at work. And we ended up, I don't know, like the roads and one where I wrote that house. And we were like up in the grass back behind there. And we were like, we couldn't get over the house. Cracking us like there. So, me, the youngest one out of all of them, goes all the way back to the house, get a box, like a cardboard box, and carry the cat in. I'm up there like switching, and I practice with him. And he comes and helps me find the perfect box to get this cat in. And like back to the house. And while I was there, with Grandpa, and I'm the only one in your house. She's like not happy. And like she wasn't very mean to me or very angry. Like these two. Most I've ever gotten. And she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, like it's fine. Like Grandpa said we could go. And she like leaps her head at me. And she's like, don't listen to Grandpa. Like, he's in charge of you, like. And so put me in the car. Who's the next girl? I never seen her drive, so like, yeah. Go and pick everyone up. Or anything after that. Just never. Except for another time. And this one was a little more recent. I think that's why that. I didn't do that, you know, like I was kind of. But man, I never seen it.
That's true.
Another time that I remember her being angry, I don't remember who, we were in the car, and I don't remember who all was in there that any of us were in. And I think we were bickering, going back and forth, and Grandma, I don't remember much about this story, but she got angry, she was talking to us like, oh, you know, stop, whatever, and then all of a sudden she stops and she goes, oh, and a red light. And it was so just, she obviously unhappy with that. I remember she was less happy after that because then, but that's all I really remember about that. Otherwise, again, I don't remember her getting very angry very often. Yeah, she was so very patient. That's far more patient than anybody else. And I appreciate that so much about her. Then another thing that I forgot to mention when I went up was she would always do these little tea parties with us. So we never had actual tea here, and it was the only time that she would bring out her nice little china, and she would have us take out the piano stool, we'd pull it out, and we would put the little like quilt or something on it, and we would put a candle and we'd help set it all up, and then we'd eat ice cream and drink soda and have other snacks. I forgot about that. Yeah, it was so sweet. And me and Paige would always kind of bicker at each other about who was gonna light the candle that time. We always had to take turns. For some reason, we both just wanted to do it really bad. She was, again, like I already said, she was the best. That's what.
She ran other red lights. I say it all the time. When it's yellow and then halfway through the intersection, red. Grandma. Oh, that was a little.
I'm Patty Reynolds. I am Kenny Connor's aunt, and you're my sister Wendy, and Wes. And Melanie was married to my brother Ken. And I just want to share that Janis was always kind to our family, and she welcomed us into her home. And when me and Wendy or we would host holidays, she would come with Melanie and my brother Ken. She was always just very kind. And when Ken and Melanie started moving and lived in different parts of Wyoming and down in San Antonio, the boys would come up for the summer. And the thing I remember is me and Wendy would say, "Oh, really, like, I can see the boys, and is it convenient?" And the thing that stands out to me is she would always say, "Of course, and family is so important." And she would always make the time to meet us in Park City, or we would drive one way and she'd drive Kenny and Connor the other way so that they could visit with family. And that's what stands out in my mind. And even the past few years, Kenny and Connor came up to San Antonio and she came out to Evanston and went sledding with all of us. And so, I mean, I just remember the kindness, both from her home and her coming to our home. And then also that the family was so important. She always made it a priority for us to be able to see Kenny and Connor. And so I was visiting with Julie and I was saying how kind she was. And she said she was always kind. And I said, you know what a legacy. That's what you need, is kindness and the love and importance of family. And that's a successful life that she loved for the legacy.
I don't know what time it is. Pretty sure. We had staunch that that day, and she'd go in the room and she'd try to sleep. And I can't remember where all the other things. I just remember the big TV room and just came on. We would be quiet for a little bit, and we would just assume she'd sleep. So we were just being loud, and she came about 3 different times, closely quiet, and she was so sweet and patient about it. She came at 4 times, and she was very stern. And she didn't talk very loud. It was louder than I've ever heard her talk. And when she left, it was me on the time. The tea parties. The tea parties, yeah, I remember the very first time we ever did that. And she insisted I would be a part of the tea party. I was more interested in Marty's old Star Wars. And she let me just do that, and I remember I came downstairs and I put cakes in it. And so ever since then, I've loved the tea party. Now it's a realization that was just a piece for her. And she would let us have seconds. Sometimes she would, but most of the time, said and safely in the tea party.
Yeah, exactly.
We would go out and sleep on the trampoline at her house all the time. But she would only stay out there for all of us to go to sleep, and she'd go up to her room. And yeah, we'd wake up and we don't be scared. We're all freezing. It was a good time. It was actually fun. I remember she would rub my back. I would rub the veins on me. I had never seen she would put in the record in the piano to play itself. I did not understand how it worked. I couldn't figure out what that was. She would always try to watch a movie. They're always old. All the time. I hated it. I was so rambunctious. I wanted to go around. I hated it. I'm super glad we did all that. there's plenty of other men, that she has this very big life-size doll in her house, and I hated that thing more than anything. It scared me so bad so many times. And the basement, I hated the basement. It was not bad. Sometimes we go down the basement, get to the back garden. I was like, all the other grandkids who go through the basement, I was going outside of that. She was probably the best grandma I can ask for. She was so sweet, and I'm not even blood related to Marty, but and I remember we went sledding one year, and I think we lived through that. She went down the hill with someone. She went past me. I was on my way back up. She was moving. It was just so. I could figure out how to that fast. Someone will that fast. I kind of wondered. She just kept going and going. It's really fun. She would make us green eggs and ham. She would put fries in the egg. Why is it green? She let me and Kenny on her put on the computer. Sometimes she had to come and shut it down because it began to get a little weird too. Yeah, she didn't like it. Yeah, I remember swimming lessons. I always look up and she'd be watching us. We go to the rec center all the time. Do some sort of class. It was great. Really fun. I had so many memories. Very part of her family. She took me.
I want to say one more. It's funny that you brought up the movies, but she did have a couple movies. I don't know. I started talking to her about one of the. And I saw her eyes on that. And she would show me all the movies all the time. We watched them all together as a family. 2017, that summer, it was just Bible Live. That was right before the Cats musical came out, though we watched that. I was like, what is this? Yeah, her favorite movie, I think, was I already had an appreciation for wasn't about to like that, but I could probably she part of that. And I couldn't really watch the movies. They were a little bit too old. I definitely get asleep for school too. Used to be turning out lights on us. Like in a little mess. So many movies. It was mostly Disney and family, but she had a million VHS. I don't know where those are now. Okay. Such a collection. Yeah. I don't know. That's not too long movie, but sharing that with her.
One time online, I found a recipe for it. One of the ingredients is turning syrup and find it in the store. So the old granny had to walk into the liquor store. It was non-alcoholic, but it was drinking. Walked into this liquor store and I had to wait in the car and she came out with it. I was like, don't tell anyone. Yeah.
So here you are.
Well, thank you for the sharing. It's an honor for me to be able to hear just a small snippet of her life. What a great time you guys had and what great memories. I want to acknowledge the pallbearers. We've got Marty Smith, Connor Reel, is that Reel? Paige Smith, Kenny Reel, Sonny Smith, and Carson Beck. At this time, to close the meeting, we'll be hearing Marty perform on the hammered dulcimer, as we've heard, to her request. After, we will close the casket, and we will then proceed up to the Providence City Cemetery for the interment.
Toots that Irish music. She always requested. Whenever she said that she missed the girls' music. Like, it's a little lively, but
rice.